Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks, and welcome to the final video in our Kinks series. So I assume if you've made it this far that you watched the first two. If you missed them for some reason, the first two videos we ranked and discussed the Kinks albums, the studio albums. Kind of ranked them from worst to best, at least as far as we see it. And so this video is, in some respects, kind of a wrap up video, but also really important because we're talking about live albums, compilations. I want to address the solo careers of Ray and Dave Davis a little bit as well. Um, Compilations, especially, are important for the Kinks. So this is by no means sort of a less important video. Uh, Actually, important stuff here. So let's start with live albums. They didn't start great with the live albums. Live at Kelvin Hall is pretty notorious for. It was recorded in about '67, and is where most of these recordings are from. Pretty bad sound, kind of perfunctory performances. Also, sort of that era, the screaming girls in the audience drown out some of the music sometimes. Not necessary in my book. Now, the Kinks have put out one of these BBC collections, like The Who and so many other Beatles, so many other bands. Sort of this collection of, it's a great double disc of their appearances on the BBC from '64 to '77. So it actually expands. It goes quite a bit, quite a bit of time. There's some good stuff on there too. Okay. Now we're getting to the essential for me. So if you watch those other two videos, again, I'll say this again, I'm a huge fan of the Arista era, 1977 to '84, when they were on Arista Records. Love it. And they put out a killer live album during that span, like right in the middle of that. And here it is, killer double live album right there. One for the Road. Sort of unoriginal album title, but just, you know, muscular, um, just awesome. I mean, they're just going on all cylinders here. You really got me on here. Just rocks. A lot of this stuff rocks. Uh, for me, the probably my single favorite Kinks song is on here, and it's this version. I would venture to put this in my top 10 favorite songs of all time. That's how big this is. Now, Celluloid Heroes. Celluloid Heroes on here, for whatever reason, for me, just blows the studio version out of the water. It just got it, how it builds, and then, well, one, that introduction. It starts, very kind of unlike the studio version. It starts instrumentally, just kind of builds with a great synthesizer line, and then just this just killer melodic, beautiful guitar solo from Dave Davis, and yeah, I mean, unbelievable. I love Celluloid Heroes on here. Anyway, I think you can tell, kind of dig that live album. Later on, excuse me, 1987 is when this was. 1987, Live the Road. Not very good. Yeah, this is after their Arista period, kind of this final sort of decline period, in my view. I don't know. Some of it's all right. Lost and Found is on here and is beautiful on here, just like it's beautiful. The one good song, in my view, on Think Visual. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It starts with a new studio track called The Road. Kind of interesting, a little bit obvious. He name checks The Who and Led Zeppelin and kind of the contemporaries, but it's still kind of a nice, you know, looking back on life on the road. But not an essential live album at all. Yeah, so and there's one other one which I do have on CD. I think I burned it. I downloaded it, so I don't have the album art. So editor can put it up here, and that's 1994, which turned out to be their last real release. It's called "To the Bone," and really good actually. Sort of jumping on that kind of storytellers unplugged train in the '90s, but kind of doing it their own way. So sort of more stripped down acoustic versions of some of their great classics, and Ray tells some great stories in between the tracks. It's a nice, that does 1994, so that does end up being their final statement. It's not a bad one. Not a bad one. All right, let's talk about compilations. Well, first of all, this is interesting here. This box set, picture book, 6 CDs. Now, I was fortunate to get this because my understanding is this is pretty hard to find now. If I remember right, this was put out and then it was kind of pulled back not too long after that. If I remember the story there, um, this covers everything. It starts at the beginning and ends with "To the Bone," the song "To the Bone," which was the one new song on that "To the Bone" album. And so, since they haven't put out anything since "To the Bone," I mean this is in some ways sort of definitive, covers their entire story. Um, yes, there's uh, some areas to nitpick a little bit. A song here or there you wish they had left put on here, but I mean, you got 6 CDs, covers every era really well, and yeah, it's a nice set if you can find it anymore. Okay, but here's what I really want to hit the compilations here, and this is cool because a couple things. One, especially in the early days, kind of like with the Beatles and some of these other British bands, a lot of times the singles didn't make it on the records. And so there's some just killer, really significant Kinks singles that weren't on some early records. And so if you're going to get a Kinks comp, you really need at least one covering the early period, for some of those singles. Um, Two, what's really cool is, since the Kinks did jump labels a bit here and there, you can buy a comp, and there are really great compilations that cover each period. And so if you wanted to, you can actually start from the beginning and connect the whole story really well, actually, through really good compilations covering each period. And the only two records, Phobia, which is terrible, and To the Bone, are the only two that aren't on some of these comps, other than this box set I showed you. So let me show you one that's absolutely essential in my book. It's Kink's Greatest Hits. Now, there's a ton of comps out there, like here's another one called Greatest Hits. There's a ton of comps out there that sort of cover those first few years. This is the best one out there. Now, I will say, I love that I found this on vinyl, but the CD version of this was put out by Rhino. The CD version of this has some additional tracks that I think are also essential. So if you can find the CD of this, they're both kind of hard to find. But yeah, so it's got those essential tracks that are on. This really basically covers the beginning to about 1966. Okay, but all those early essential, just on the vinyl here. You really got me. All Day and All the Night, Set Me Free, Who'll Be Next in Line, Where Have All the Good Times Gone, I Need You, Till the End of the Day, Tired of Waiting for You, Well Respected Man, Come On Now, Stop Your Sobbing, Dedicated Follower of Fashion, I'm Not Like Everybody Else, Sunny Afternoon. 5-star lineup there. This is just essential rock and roll. I mean, such an amazing comp, and I'd say at least half of those weren't on those early records. They're just singles or B-sides. Okay, so you need this. A much beloved and critically loved comp is the Kink Chronicles, and this picks up about 66 to about 69 or so. So, kind of their most celebrated period. And this is great because well, actually it goes into 70 because Lola's on here. But it's got a lot of those essential songs that were on those, mid to late 60s masterpieces, but then a lot of stuff that wasn't. A lot of the tracks that were not put on those records but are just brilliant, and some singles and all that. So this is a great kind of quirky too, really interesting comp. Well, then you've got this one, the Kinks' Greatest, which picks up, um, about 71 or so until, well, actually, yeah, about 71 or so, then through that theatrical period, which is kind of crazy. So this is nice because it does sort of pluck some of the best songs from some of those very difficult albums to get through in the mid 70s. So that's cool. Again, I've told you I love that Arista period, and Arista, they put out this just perfect compilation of that Arista era. Double album. There they are from that era. Um, yeah, there are one or two songs I wish were I wish State of Confusion was on here. I wish Moving Pictures was on here. Those are really the only two major ones, though, for me. Uh, Everything else on here is just perfect. You know, they pluck just the great songs off of those Arista. Man, this plays so. This is what really made me a Kinks fanatic. In the '80s, when I bought this, man, I played the hell out of this. Oh, love it. And it's got the live version of Celluloid Heroes on here, so even that's there. And then finally, you can wrap it up with Lost and Found, which is from the MCA stuff, from '86 to '89. This is ridiculous. It's only two covers, like, well, three records if you include the road. Three records, but they still don't. They still like miss a few really good songs off of these records that aren't all that good. Looney Balloon isn't on here. Whatever. I don't know. But I guess some of the other good songs from that era on here. So there you go. So those are kind of the comps. All right, really briefly, just gonna wrap it up here. But obviously the Kinks stopped in the mid 1990s, but Ray and Dave have continued making music apart. Okay, so both have issued a lot of actually really interesting, good solo work. Um, Ray Davis, the only one I have on vinyl is the soundtrack he did to this thing called Return to Waterloo, which is kind of interesting because this fell kind of within, like, around, like, kind of between, well, it was around the very end of the Arista period. And what's interesting is it's basically the Kinks, but without Dave Davis. So it's credited just to Ray Davis, but he's got the rest of the Kinks on there that were in the band at the time. Just no Dave. There's actually the title track "Return to Waterloo" is actually really nice. So that would have fit right in on some of those Arista records. It's kind of nice. So I do have some other Ray Davis solo record. I don't have them all on CD, but I don't have them on the shelf there. There's two I wanted to mention. We can just kind of throw them up here. Storyteller from 1998. It's kind of nice. Sort of continues that what they were doing on To the Bone. Where Ray kind of solo now plays some new songs he's written, and then if I remember right, has some older King songs, and again tells stories in between. So storyteller, the storyteller's show, but it's called Storyteller. Unplugged, that kind of thing. The best solo album from Ray that I've at least heard is Other People's Lives from 2006. There's some really good songs on there. I'd recommend looking at that one. It kind of bothers me though, because it sounds like this would be a really good kind of more modern sounding Kinks record. Like, it really sounded like it could be sort of modern Kinks. But anyway, it's Ray though. Now I mentioned in these other videos, Dave Davis. I love his singing. I love his songwriting. He usually got a couple tunes on Kinks records. And so I've been really interested in sort of following his solo career. Now I'm going to show you something. This has been released multiple versions, bootlegs, whatever. I'm so glad I got a bootleg vinyl of this. So this is called The Album That Never Was, and from Davies, and it's been issued in multiple versions. So here's the deal: in the late '60s, and I think the plans for this were pretty far, kind of well along. Dave was going to release a solo album, and never did. And some of these songs were kind of slated for that, and they ended up just sort of, some of them ended up on Kinks records, some of them ended up as like B-sides to singles and stuff. But you put these songs together, it makes this would have been just a killer record in the late '60s if they had put it out here. So it's got like Death of a Clown and Love Me Till the Sun Shines, Susanna's Still Alive, Funny Face. All of those ended up on Kinks records in the late '60s. But then you've got Lincoln County, There Is No Life Without Love, Hold My Hand, Creepin' Jean, This Man He Weeps Tonight, Mindless Child of Motherhood. Just killer tracks that ended up as B-sides, or you can get them all on as like bonus tracks on these reissues of Kinks CDs nowadays. But just to have them all together on this like the album that could have been, you know, the album that never was. I mean, it's just God, it's so good, so good. There's a couple other, just real quick, couple. I don't have everything from Dave Davis solo, but uh, this is a pretty good one. I think, was this his first solo album? I don't remember actually. It's from the early '80s, I think. AFL 13603. Yeah, it's like the catalog number or something. Anyway, whatever. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I really like this though. This is awesome. This is a live double album from Dave Davis. He's just got a great band with him, and he's doing some of his really good solo songs. Where is it? There's a great Imagination's Real, which is a really good solo album, song of his. But the majority of these are Kink songs, and he just rips through them, man. And it's kind of cool to hear some of these Kink songs done with Dave singing them, where on the original Kinks records it was Ray singing them. And I'm a big fan of Dave's vocals. So when was this come out? Nah, this says 2020, but that's the reissue. Date, wow, when did this originally? 1997. So this is from '97. So really good, really good. And then fine, I think this was a record store day release called Kinked, which is kind of interesting. A little double album here of some of it are kind of some solo. It's sort of a weird comp, like this song "Unfinished Business," which is a beautiful solo recording of his. But then he sort of revisits some of his great songs from the Kinks, like "Living on a Thin Line" and "Love Gets You." Or no, actually, "Love Gets You" just solo. "Man He Weeps Tonight," "Death of a Clown," and "Strangers." But then also does some really nice, kind of stripped down versions of some other Kinks songs, like "Too Much on My Mind" and what's some other ones here? That were done, with Ray singing initially, like "Picture Book." Anyway, kind of interesting. I really dig that live album though from Dave. Well, anyway, just kind of wrapping up the Kinks stuff here. So I don't know. If you got anything more to say about the Kinks in the comments? Let loose here, because we're going to be moving on in the next episode. Not Kinks. We're going to move on to something else. Well, anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed Kinks week or weeks, and I certainly have loved this band. So anyway, we'll see you next time. Please do subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, like the videos, share the videos, all that stuff. And we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks, when we will not be talking about the Kinks.